Heated Rivalry, the latest show on HBO, distributed by Crave and funded by the generosity of Canadian taxpayers. Thank you, Canada. Is a show that a shit ton of romance lovers are talking about, and a lot of us who read and loved the books by Rachel Reed have been waiting for this moment to come. Yes, Ilya Rozanov would always be the caustic little shit that owns my heart and loves and yearns and gives up everything for the one he loves. Oh, to be loved by an Ilya Rozanov. Shane Holland, you lucky bastard. Now, I'm sure my words at this time have you thinking that I want to talk solely about Olenov, Shane, and Ilya's ship name in today's video. That would be wrong. My focus is instead on Captain, my Captain, the living inspiration that is Scott Hunter, and how his story fits into what we are getting in the rest of Heated Rivalry. Because you see, some of the fans are mad at the latest episode drop because to them, having an episode devoted entirely to Skip, Scott and Kip, makes zero sense when they wish they got to see more Holanov. But I think working with that mindset is ignoring a crucial part of the story and the series as a whole that saw us from Scott and Kip to Shane and Ilya to Ryan and Fabian to Eric and Kyle to my loves Troy and Harris, and finally wrapping things up again with Shane and Ilya. This is a series about community, the families we build, the sacrifices we make to keep them, and the courage to be had when someone else has gone ahead of you to pave the way to make things just a bit easier, and to give you that comfort and courage that when you're ready to spend your time in the sun, you know that you won't be alone. And that, I think, is pretty powerful. Even if we didn't get to see enough of Francois's gorgeous ass in episode 3, and I mean that literally. Funniest thing is that I wasn't planning initially on making any Heated Rivalry videos or content. My thought was Jacob Tierney is doing such a great job adapting the story, and there are already nuances present within the adaptation that I figured would easily come through for people watching the show to be able to connect with. But then I went on Twitter after seeing the latest episode, and it hit me that, you know what, I have not hidden it on my channel that my ass is square, and you all know that I do enjoy a good romance story, contrary to what a lot of people might think because of my Rom-Com Ganda series, which I will like to reiterate is what I do when I specifically turn on the critical part of my brain to highlight the propaganda and conditioning inherent in romance stories for the sake of that particular video series. Outside of Rom-Com Ganda, I can turn off the critical voice and just enjoy the romance I'm getting for what it is. And I think us being able to do so is important as lovers of romance stories because, and I hate to sound like a broken record here, romance readers and watchers have always been cheated on so much by society in the past because it's always pretty easy for them to discount romance stories as simply being fluff or smut if you're going for the extra raunchy, extra vivid sex scenes like we get in the Game Changer series. But anyone who spent any amount of time on my channel knows that I live for analyzing stories and characters, especially within romance, because there is so much depth to be found in it. My Bridgerton playlist is over 50 videos long, I think, because I think that stories about love and acceptance and the courage to be who you are whilst you try to survive and possibly thrive in the world in which said stories set are one of the most inspiring things we get to enjoy and experience as readers and viewers. And this is no different from what we get with Heated Rivalry, especially with what we got with episode 3. Of course, before I go into all of that, a quick thank you to my lovely patrons and YouTube members whose support have been instrumental in helping me continue to make content, especially since I started doing this full time at the start of the year, which was the last time I was in paid employment. And a special shout out to Lena and Holly for their extra support. You get all the hearts and kisses too. Mwah! If you too would like to support me on Patreon or become a YouTube member to enjoy certain perks, even get a shout out, the link to do so is in the description bar. I would also like to add that there might be the occasional, just tiny sprinkles of book spoilers brought in for the sake of me giving further clarity on a raised point. However, I will be sure to give you a heads up when that is about to happen with a timestamp on screen so you can skip over to the non-spoilery bit. And with that said, Heated Rivalry Season 1 Episode 3 focuses entirely on the romance between New York Admiral's Captain Scott Hunter and Straw and Berry. Not Straw plus Berry, mind you, but Straw and Berry, barrister and smoothie maker and sometimes waiter/server but applying to grad school historian Christopher Kip Grady. The episode gives us the saccharine sweetness of a first meet between the two of them. It was so cute. It had me kicking my feet in glee and smiling like a loon. And it's Scott like a fucking truck because of just how much he wants and loves Kip and the fear he holds within him because of his position and career as an NHL player, a popular, very visible, very well known, very successful NHL player. At least he was successful in the previous seasons. He was entering a bit of a slump in this one, but meeting Kip changes that for him forever, and he starts to get his groove back. And this is in addition to the attraction it feels for Kip and the comfort and companionship he finds in his presence, which is what then leads to Scott falling for Kip so quickly in the story. Like, if show only fans think that Scott and Kip moved too quickly in their domestic era in the episode of the show, I would just like to state that their story in the book went so fast. We were at the climax of what everything was building up to in just 5 months within the story. I know, wild. And yet, I have always seen the speed with which Scott and Kip move primarily from Scott's side as being driven by his loneliness. The same loneliness that sits at the heart of Shane and Ilya's own romance, although theirs is different, of course, because in addition to not letting anyone find out about their sexuality, there's also the rivalry that has spanned their entire careers, which would feel like a betrayal to their teams and their fans should the truth ever get out about what they really feel about each other. It's a bit different, yes, but with Shane and Ilya, the only people who know about their relationship as at where we are in the show is Shane and Ilya, and that isolation does get to you. It demands that you give up so much, spend the best of your youth and your career and your love in the dark for fear of ruining things in a sport that matters so much to you, and that is the same for Scott. Matter of fact, it is what we see across the different couples in the book series and what we've seen of the show so far as well. These characters are men who are driven by the need and desire to succeed in a highly competitive sport that they bleed and shatter their bodies for, whilst at the same time having to navigate the inherent homophobia present within the sport from the leadership all the way to the fans. It is that isolation that keeps them separate, whereby they have this sport that they love dearly, that they are devoted to, and that requires that they always keep a big part of them hidden away from the prying eyes of others, even fellow members on their teams. Teammates that would ideally be friends because of how long they've played together can turn into the most vicious of people should they find out that they are nothing like what they had expected when it comes to their sexuality or who they choose to fall in love with. Minor spoiler warnings here, Montreal Voyagers. I will always be praying for your downfall. Same goes for you, Toronto Raptors. Fucking ass pricks. Anyway, as I was saying, it is that isolation, that loneliness that makes having community and a family chosen or otherwise in your corner a central theme to these stories and something that matters to queer fans as well. It is why Scott Hunter and his romance with Kip is so important, no matter how upset some of the fan base are about it. Because I did see tweets where someone pointed out that, and spoiler warning for the ending of Game Changer by Rachel Reed and part of Heated Rivalry as well, someone pointed out that, well, it makes no sense really that Skip got an entire episode dedicated to them. We could still have had the kiss at the end, which we all know was the impetus for Ilya to change his mind on what would have been him rejecting Shane's request of him to come with him to his cottage for the summer. It's them both witnessing Scott kissing Kip before everybody on national television after winning the Stanley Cup that gives them both the courage to actually give their relationship a true chance. Without that kiss, we wouldn't have gotten the cottage, the confession, the discovery. Everything else that got us all in love as Endgame would not happen without Skip. And this Twitter user said that, well, they could have just filmed the kiss at some point and then just have Shane and Ilya make the connections when they saw it, because there was to them no need to waste an episode on Scott's story and journey when the focus should be on Olenov. Now, I would always object to that because, like I said earlier in this video, the reason why we need the episode that is focused more on Scott, and I know it sounds like I'm talking out of my ass because the marketing was all about Skip and made it seem like the episode was focused on Skip. And yes, Skip is integral to the episode. However, I will also like to point out that the episode title itself says Hunter. The focus would always be on Scott Hunter. Why? Because he is the very embodiment of what it means to spend years hiding bits of who you are with no support, no one to turn to or lean on or be honest to, and what toll that places on a person. It is important to show that, to have us as viewers realize that what these characters have to deal with, the loneliness that they are battling with, and how desperately they need community. Now, Kip has that. He has his friends who are also gay like he is. There's Eleanor and Maria, so support at work with Maria and outside of it with the rest of his friends. One of whom, mild spoiler here, is a grad student studying something quite similar to the program he wants to get into. Hi, Kyle. And there's the added layer of Kip having the support of his dad as well. I mean, the little we got to see of his home life, everyone can admit that Kip is loved and adored and supported unconditionally at home. Scott doesn't have any of that. I will love you unconditionally. Sorry, my brain was like, Noria, insert Katy Perry's unconditionally. If you follow my channel, you know what you signed up for. My brain does things, we just roll with it. I apologize. Anyway, Scott doesn't have any of that. I mean, Geller's speech spells it out to the audience that the only family he's ever had is hockey. That's what his support system was when his parents were killed, and that's what has been with him his entirety of his life. And whilst hockey is his family, we cannot say that family, the family found within that sport that he loves, has loved him back unconditionally. He's always had to give up the parts of him that matter as much in order to keep that love because they demand it. And that does not just apply to Scott. It applies to all the other players within the NHL, the characters that we meet in different phases of the series. It matters to them as well. Scott is the baseline, is the one that is setting the premise within which this story is happening and what the stakes are for these characters. And we see the episode, at the end of it, we see him having to walk away from Kip because, as Eleanor rightfully points out to him, being forced back into the closet, into a space where he has no community or support, anyone to really talk to or confide in or be honest about with, has been making Kip very miserable and lonely as well. And Kip deserves better, as does Scott. And Scott loves him too much to do that, and so walks away. It's a marked contrast from how the events played out in the book. Spoiler warning for more of Game Changer, because you see, in the books, Kip is the one that initially walks away from Scott. They have an argument where Kip realizes that being shoved back into the closet because he cannot be out with the man he loves is not something that he wants. They have this big ass fight. Stuff happens with Kyle, but eventually Kip gets the advice that has him coming back around and hearing Scott out when he makes his way back to Straw and Berry, and they decide on the future of their relationship alongside Scott's promise to come out as soon as possible, as he wants to be open with the world about the man he loves. It is beautiful. And yet, the part of me that loves stories that wreck me prefers the change of the show. Scott, who has spent so much of his life battling the loneliness of not being open about who he truly is, not wanting to subject the man he loves to the same, walking away from him and the community that he would otherwise bring to him. And we see this with him walking away from Kip at the birthday party at the Kingfisher that his friends have thrown him. Like, that is community waiting for Scott right there. And he walks back into the loneliness that he's chosen to wear as a second skin and what he believes he is only allowed to have. And this, we know, echoes Ilya and Shane's story as well. The fact that we see, even in the 2 episodes that we've gotten of them so far in the show, that there is the brief moment where they get to choose themselves and the companionship that they find in one another, and yet ultimately always have to walk away and go back to the loneliness of being apart for months at a time before they can see each other again. People need to pay more attention to those timestamps. Like, they pop up on screen. You're meant to understand that this story is not necessarily being told in a chronological order, but like their romance spans years. By the time we get to the end of the series, almost like over a decade, like, it's important. Well, yeah, this is a very crucial point to note by the time we get to the long game and we start to minor spoiler alert, start to see reflections of Skip in All Enough in a way in which they echo themselves and their struggle. It is fantastic to me. I honestly don't think if anyone paid attention to the first book and the last book in the series, they would not be able to see the parallels in the ship and the story. So yes, Skip matters. Skip matters for what it has to say about how different queer relationships start. I mean, they were giving you all lesbians and I loved it. But they also matter because at the core of it, they start the entire series off on the discourse of the importance of community and the courage needed to actively participate in it. And for the players of the NHL, in the world of Rachel Reed, Scott Hunter is the game changer who creates the community where they then get to be, where they have a voice and where they get to change the sport that they love and have given so much to, one step at a time. And I don't know about you, but that is pretty awesome to me. Scott Hunter is awesome. Skip is awesome. But of course, these are just my thoughts. I would love to hear yours. Whether or not you agree with me, please share them in the comments. Like this video, however, if you've watched this far and haven't done so yet, and enjoyed anything I had to say, share it with others so that they can find my channel as well. Or you can check out my gaming or ASMR channels if they sound like something you might be interested in. I have them both linked in the description bar. I will see you tomorrow. Yes, tomorrow with a new video. Until then, do remember, obsessing over the things you love, perfectly valid coping mechanism.